back to another edition of Center Stage Sweets. Today we are talking about the smash Broadway musical Hamilton, and we are making delicious chocolate cake pops to go with it. So I know you might be thinking, well, what on earth do cake pops have to do with Hamilton? So quick little thing. First of all, hope everybody's either seen it live or on Disney Plus. Totally worth it. Absolutely amazing show. But there is a role in the ensemble that they call the bullet. And if you watch the show really closely, every time there's a duel or something, she like moves her hand like the bullet and like guides it along the stage. And they've also kind of incorporated her as kind of like an omen of death because a lot of people die in the show. And it's absolutely just so cool that this ensemble role has kind of like taken on this life in this show. And so we wanted to make little bullet cake pops to honor that great little role in the show. So let's get started. In my mixing bowl here, I have 1 cup of sugar and 1 stick of butter, and we're gonna get started by creaming that together. Now that our butter and sugar are creamed together, we're gonna add in 1 egg and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and mix it up until they are combined. This batter can get a little stuck in the beater sometimes, so definitely make sure that you push the mixture out of the beaters in between your additions. So now we're gonna add in our dry ingredients and our wet ingredients, alternating it dry, wet, dry, wet, dry. For our dry ingredients, I've already sifted together 1½ cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, ½ cup of cocoa powder, and ½ teaspoon of kosher salt. And for our wet ingredient, we have 1 cup of almond milk. You can use any kind of milk you prefer. We just use almond milk in this house because I'm lactose intolerant. Cake batter is all set. Now you'll notice that this batter is a little thick. It's almost more like a brownie batter, and you want it to be that way because you actually want this cake to be a little bit on the drier side because we're gonna mix it in with frosting and then form the cake pops. And if it's too moist, we actually discovered this in our testing, if it's too moist, they just fall right off the stick, and that is not what you want. So a slightly drier cake batter and a little bit heavier and thicker is actually what we are going for here. So just gonna give the beaters a quick scrape off, and then we are gonna move this into our cake pan. And today we are working with an 8x8 or a 9x9 if you've got one, square pan, the kind you put brownies in. I've already greased it with a little bit of baking cooking spray. So we're gonna put our cake right on in here. I've also preheated our oven to 350 degrees, and this will go in for about 35 to 40 minutes. If you're using a 9x9 pan, I might start at 30 minutes just to see, but since we've got the 8x8, we're gonna start it at 35. This is also one of the few times too that if you overcook it a little, it's okay. Again, because the dryness is actually helpful before we mix it in with the batter, or with the frosting. It's not like the end of the world if this gets overcooked a little bit. Obviously you don't want to burn it, but an extra minute won't kill this one. So just want to smooth it out, make sure it is as even around the pan as it can be. And into the oven we go. Our cake has come out of the oven. It actually ended up taking about 38 minutes. So we have it off to the side and cooling. And again, when you're checking your cakes, best way to check is with a toothpick or a thin cake tester. If it comes out clean, it's good to go. If it's not, just add in about a minute or 2 at a time, depending on how much batter comes off on that tester or toothpick. We are going to start now making our frosting. We have 6 tablespoons of softened butter and 1½ cups of powdered sugar. And we're gonna mix those together to get started. Now now that we've slightly incorporated our butter and our powdered sugar, we're gonna add in 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And behind me on the stove, I have 4 ounces of unsweetened cocoa melting. We're gonna get that off the stove and mix that in here as well. Our chocolate has just come off the stove, and because we're not working with eggs or anything, we really don't have to worry about it cooling for a little bit. In fact, it still being warm might actually help it blend in or mix in a little bit. So we're gonna get this into our bowl and we're gonna finish mixing up our frosting. So now that we've got most of the ingredients together for our frosting, we're gonna add in our milk, but we're gonna do it slowly because you can't take it back out, you can only keep adding. So we're gonna put in approximately 2 to 4 tablespoons, but we're gonna do it 1 tablespoon at a time. Too much stuff. Tablespoon number 2. And a lot of things can end up affecting how much liquid you need to use. If it's a really humid day, you might need less than you would on a day that's a little bit drier out. So just be careful of that. Don't just assume because last time you needed 4 that you need all 4 tablespoons again. You might only need 1 or 2. I've actually made that mistake before, so learn from my mistakes. We've let our cake cool slightly. It doesn't actually need to cool all the way because we're gonna destroy it anyways. Normally why you let a cake cool completely is so that it doesn't start to fall apart as you try to move it or decorate it, but because we're gonna break it up, it doesn't matter. You just want it cool enough that you can touch and handle the pan without hurting yourself. I've also taken the time to cut it into about 16 smaller pieces so that it'll be easy to pick them up and put them into our frosting and mix them up just a little bit at a time. Otherwise the mixer will get a little bit overwhelmed. So we're just gonna grab a couple pieces of it to start. And again, it can be messy because we're just gonna keep breaking it up as we go. Set that aside. And what we're gonna do is just keep mixing it in bit by bit, straight into the frosting until all of the cake is incorporated. We've added the last of the cake now, and I'm just scraping the bottom of the bowl to make sure that if there's any frosting, which there is, stuck to the bottom, that it gets brought up to the top so we can mix it in with the rest of the cake. But you can see it's got a nice kind of tougher consistency that'll hold together really well to make the cake pops. Before we start rolling out our balls, make sure you have a cookie sheet or a large tray of some sort and line it with wax paper. The wax paper is going to make it really easy to remove the balls even after they've chilled. You can still use parchment paper, but they might stick a little bit more. The wax paper is really designed for a nice, easy release. So to make the balls, we've got our cake frosting mixture over here. I'm taking a small spoon and just gonna put together, good advice, take off your jewelry before you start rolling. Put together our cake balls. I want it just a tiny bit bigger than that, but not much, because I want to make sure that there is space on our pedestal between each ball so that they can dry without touching each other and the shells hardening on each other. So make a little ball and then pop them right on your tray. And as you make subsequent balls, just kind of measure them up in size to that original one just to make sure that you're consistent across the board. Unfortunately, I don't have a scoop that's the size that I want for these. One scoop is too small, the other one's too big, so the only way to get the Goldilocks factor is to do it yourself. So that's pretty close, we'll call that good. I'm just gonna keep making the balls. Our cake pops are now all formed. They're ready to go in the fridge, but before we put them in, I'm just gonna put a little bit of cling wrap over the top of them just to keep out any funky refrigerator smells. They're gonna go in the fridge for 1 to 2 hours. You can leave them in overnight if you want to. Just give them a little bit more time to rest when they come out of the fridge because we are gonna slightly re-roll them just before we put them in their shell. So I'm gonna get these in the fridge. Our cake pops are just about done chilling, so now we're gonna start on our shell for the cake pops. In the saucepan right now, we have a 1/2 cup of water and a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, and we're going to add approximately 2 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips. That's about a 12-ounce bag. And we've got this over medium heat, and we're just gonna keep stirring it until it's all melted together. You can see the chocolate has melted nicely into that simple syrup that we made. So now we are ready to start dipping our cake pops. And I'm gonna turn the heat down to a low just to keep it warm so that it doesn't harden up on us while we're dipping, but also so that we can, if we need to, we can reheat it and get it to melt again. First thing, before you dip your balls into, the cake balls into the chocolate, you wanna dip just the very tip of your stick that you're gonna use. This is going to help the cake pop stick and stay in place. So we're gonna grab one of these. They came off really nice. If you want to, you can give them another quick roll if you wanna unflatten the bottom, not necessary, all about preference. And then we're gonna dip it into the chocolate. Sometimes it helps to lean the pot a little bit to get it fully covered. And then just kind of let it, maybe shake it off a little bit, get some of that excess off of it. And then we have this handy little cake pop stand here. Just gonna pop it in and let it dry. And we're just gonna keep going on those. While these ones are drying and setting, we're gonna decorate them a little. So as I mentioned before, they're kind of meant to be inspired by musket balls. So we're going to add a little bit of silver, a little silver sprinkle to the top of them. And it's best to do this not while they just first come out, but after they've had the chance to set for a few minutes. They'll stick to the top, but they won't run down the sides or anything. If you get it when they first come out of the dip, they may run down the side as it melts. So we're doing some different things with the decoratings. I think that's one of the fun things about cake pops is that you can try a bunch of different things and they actually look really pretty all presented together when they aren't perfectly uniform. So I had that first batch that we put the sprinkles on in the freezer, and in the meantime, I dipped another batch. And as you can see, I've had to put them in a different container. If you don't have a cake pop stand, or your cake pop stand, the spaces are too narrow for the size of the cake pops you made and you need more space, you can find a narrow and shallow mug or a cup that like we have over here. It helps, and just kind of span them out like we did. And now we've stuck them in the freezer for about 15 to 20 minutes. And I have this fun little edible glitter spray that's silver. So again, trying to get that metallic concept going. So we're just gonna give it a little bit of a spritz all over them. We're not necessarily trying to cover it, again, just trying to get that metallic-y feel. So we're just gonna, and it's kind of wild and unpredictable, which is half the fun. You wanna get the different angles too, so you wanna make sure that you kind of spin it around. You don't want any of it, you don't want any unloved cake pops when it comes to the decorating. And you just kind of get that sparkle on them. And then back into the freezer they go until they're hardened. Once they're hardened, you can probably put them in the fridge to save a little bit of space in your freezer. You just want them to go in the freezer first to get that first initial hardening of the outside, then they can live in the fridge. We let our cake pops chill in the freezer for about 15 to 20 minutes. And as you can see, we had a little bit of fun changing up the decorations on each of them. We really hope that you like them, and I'm gonna give them a try myself because they smell so good. They're like little balls of fudge. So good. We hope you give these a try at home. They're simple. They do take a little bit of time, but trust me, they're so delicious. The payoff is totally worth taking the little extra time that it takes to make these. We hope you enjoy making them. And if you enjoy this video, please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Center Stage Sweets. And now we are on Facebook too at Center Stage Sweets. And be sure to visit us at centerstagesweets.com for more recipes. See you next time.